Today we are going to read chapter 5 called After the Ancestral Pueblo. Before we begin reading this chapter, I'm going to give you a little bit of background information about some of the specific people that are mentioned in this chapter. Okay, so listen as I read. The native peoples of the Southwest lived in what are today Arizona, western New Mexico, and parts of Utah, Colorado, and Texas. The area has a very dry climate with little rainfall. Where irrigation was possible, Native Americans raised squash, corn, beans, cotton, tobacco, and gourds. Where annual precipitation was inadequate for farming, the people were hunters and gatherers. Those who were farmers lived in permanent housing. Those who hunted for their food had homes that could be disassembled, easily transported, and reassembled. Okay, so these are the Hopi people. This name means peaceful ones. It's a specific group of Pueblo Indians. Their homes are made of adobe or stone, usually square or rectangular in shape. And you guys can look up pictures of these specific homes. They're known for their fine basketry and pottery. They number more than 10,000 today, and most of them live on a reservation in Arizona. Historically were farmers and later also became sheep herders. They wove cotton clothing. They had many deities associated with nature, so that means gods. Kachinas are spirits who were messengers of the deities and visited a community for 6 months annually, represented during ceremonies by men wearing masks. Okay, the next group is the Zuni. This is a specific group of Pueblo Indians. Their homes are adobe or stone, square, oval, or rectangular in shape. They were mainly farmers and artisans. They were noted for their silver and turquoise jewelry, pottery, and baskets. There are about 9,000 that live in the Zuni Pueblo in western New Mexico. And it's rebuilt on the site of one of the 7 the Spanish destroyed. They have woven cotton clothing, and they have deities associated with nature. The Navajo is another tribe. This name means Dine or Dinah, which means the people. Originally hunters and gatherers, they acquired sheep from the Spanish in the 1600s and became sheep herders. Hogans for homes, which are dome-shaped buildings made of logs and mud. They're known for their silver jewelry and woven rugs and blankets. There's about 220,000 today on reservations in the Southwest. They're the largest single group of Native Americans today. They earn a living in lumbering, mining, and herding. Their clothes are made from buckskin and cotton. They have brilliantly colored woven clothing. Earth surface people and holy people. They should keep their lives in harmony with supernatural world through ceremonies. Another group is the Apache. These are primarily nomadic hunters and gatherers. They raided other native peoples, Spanish and later Americans, for horses and other goods. They have wickiups as homes, which are dome or cone-shaped poles covered with brush or grass. Because they're nomads, their houses had to be easy to assemble. Today there's more than 16,000 and they live on a reservation in the Southwest. They earn their living through raising cattle, timber, and mining, and their clothing is made from animal skins. They believed in mountain spirits who lived in the mountains and had power to create good or evil in the lives of humans. Okay, so that's just a little bit of background information about the groups that we're going to read about today in our book. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 5, After the Ancestral Pueblo. The Pueblo. Native people and scientists agree that the descendants of the ancestral Pueblo cliff dwellers include the Pueblo. Today, these people live in the American Southwest. In Spanish, the word Pueblo means village. In the 1500s and 1600s, the first Spanish explorers arrived in the Southwest. There they met the native people. The Spanish named these people for the villages where they had lived and farmed for hundreds, even thousands of years. Pueblo villages look like they're modeled after ancestral Pueblo cliff dwellings. Like the ancestral Pueblo, the Pueblo built apartment-style homes out of adobe bricks. This is one reason scientists feel certain that the Pueblo people are related to the ancient ancestral Pueblo cliff dwellers. One group of Pueblo people named the Hopi built their villages on the tops of mesas for protection from enemy attacks. You can see their homes built there. 19 Pueblo villages still exist. They can be found on the high mesas, which are a rocky flat-topped hill, in the deep canyons, and along the river valleys of New Mexico. All Pueblo villages share many traditions passed down from their ancestors, but each separate village also has its own special customs. Okay, so here are the Hopi and the Zuni. I gave you a little bit of information about them, but we're going to read a little bit more. The Hopi are Pueblo people. They stayed in the high desert or on the plateau areas of Arizona, just like their ancestors. They built villages on the high mesas. There they grew corn, squash, beans, and melons. The word Hopi comes from a phrase that means the peaceful people. Today the Hopi live mostly in northeastern Arizona. The Zuni are also Pueblo. They live in the western part of New Mexico. The Zuni do not share a language with the other Pueblo groups. The Navajo, which is another group that we just read about. For tens of thousands of years, groups of Native Americans have migrated. Some moved to follow game, which are the animals that they would hunt. Some moved because the climate changed. Some moved to find more or better land. Others were driven away by enemies. Whenever people move, they bring some things with them. They leave others behind. The Navajo migrated from northern Canada to the southwest. In their language, they call themselves Dina, which means the people. The Navajo language links them to their ancestors in Alaska and Canada. Perhaps the Navajo are directly related to the hunter-gatherers who lived in Beringia many thousands of years ago. The Navajo who came to the southwest from Canada fought with the Pueblo who had lived in the southwest for thousands of years. But the Navajo also learned from the Pueblo. They learned how to survive in the harsh climate of the high desert. For example, the Navajo often used adobe to build their homes, but they built individual domed houses in small scattered groups rather than in villages. The Spanish first brought sheep to the southwest in the 1600s. As a result, raising sheep became a big part of the Navajo way of life. The Navajo became more settled. They used fleece from their sheep to spin wool and weave blankets and rugs. Still known for their weaving skills, today the Navajo make up the largest Native American nation in the United States. Okay, so let's pause right there for just a second and think a little bit about what we've just read. Going back to the Pueblo, what are some reasons that archaeologists believe that the Pueblo are the descendants of the Ancestral Pueblo? Okay, so if you remember back in our reading, it says that Pueblo villages look like they're modeled on the Ancestral Pueblo cliff dwellers. That's one reason why they believe that. Thinking back to the Hopi, what does the word Hopi mean? Okay, the word Hopi means the peaceful people. Where do the Hopi live today? They live in Arizona. What makes the Zuni people different from the other Pueblo groups? Okay, the Zuni do not share a language with the other Pueblo groups. That's what makes them different. Now let's think about the Navajo people. What are some of the reasons that groups of Native Americans migrated over tens of thousands of years ago? One reason was to escape the climate changes. And they also wanted to find more or better land, and they wanted to escape enemies. Where did they originally come from? They originally came from the southwest. They originally came from Canada and migrated to the southwest from Canada. How did life change for the Navajo people after the 1600s? So you can kind of see that on this page, actually. The Navajo began to raise sheep and to make things from fleece, and as a result, they became more settled. Okay, they used the fleece from their sheep to spin wool and weave blankets and rugs. and they were able to sell these things, and they didn't have to move around as much. All right, so let's continue on to the Apache and the Comanche, I think is how you say that. Like the Navajo, the Apache also migrated from northern Canada to the southwest. They traveled along the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains. Apache territory covered parts of present-day Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and northern Mexico. The Apache hunted and traded. Later, after the Spanish brought horses to America, the Apache learned how to ride the new animals. Horses made it easier for the Apache to hunt and to raid rival Navajo villages, as well as to attack Spanish forts. Here's some pictures that go along with this. The Comanche were the only Native Americans more powerful than the Apache. The Comanche successfully gained Apache land and pushed the Apache farther west. Because of this, the Apache finally had to make peace with their enemies, the Spaniards. They needed Spanish protection from the Comanche. On a hot summer's day in the 1700s, 4 Apache chiefs and their followers met with Spanish missionaries in San Antonio, Texas. There the Apache turned over their weapons. In a ceremony of peace, the Apache and the Europeans buried the hatchet. This means that they agreed to stop fighting with each other. We still use the expression bury the hatchet when we agree to stop arguing with someone. Unfortunately, the hatchet wasn't really buried. Not all the Apache made peace, nor did the Europeans or their descendants leave them alone. All through the 1800s, the Apache were at war with other Native Americans and with various settlers. They fought against the Spaniards and the Mexicans and finally the Americans. One of the most famous Apache leaders was Geronimo, who fought to save his people's land. Today, several Apache groups live in the southwestern United States. The Comanche mostly live in Oklahoma. Okay, so going back to some of these pictures that we saw, it says that the Spanish introduced horses to the Americas, and the Apache learned to use these new animals. They hunted on horseback, and they used buffalo hides to make teepees. Okay, and it says that the horses were very important to the Apache and the Comanche. All right, so what we just discussed, how did the Apache use the horses brought to the Americas by the Spanish? They used them to follow the buffalo and to raid villages and forts. Why were the Apache often at war? The Apache were often at war because they had to defend their land against other Native Americans and the Spanish, as well as against Mexican and American settlers. What does the term bury the hatchet mean? This means to stop fighting or arguing, and we often still use this term today, even though they met and buried the hatchet. They didn't actually, make peace. Okay, so they still continued to fight after this. Where do many of the Apache and the Comanche live today? Today, they live in the southwestern United States. The Apache do, and then the Comanche live mostly in Oklahoma. All right, so that is it for Chapter 5. Tomorrow, we will discuss this a little bit more, and we will also take notes. So make sure that you watch this whole video, listen to it, and I will see you guys again tomorrow.